Hey guys, today's video is going to be all about the new Natasha Denona face palette. This is the Natasha Denona Love face palette. I'm not really sure if I like it or not yet, so we're going to get into all of my thoughts on it, all of the comparisons. There's actually quite a few dupes in this palette as well. Oh, you can see my hand in the reflection. Look at that. That is so eerie. My gosh. But this is a palette that was actually very briefly launched on Look Fantastic US, I believe also on the UK Look Fantastic website. And this one, I don't know why she hasn't launched it on her website or Sephora yet, especially because Valentine's Day just passed. And you'd think that there would be like a nice moment right there to launch it around Valentine's Day. But this is the Love Face Palette. I'm gonna warn you, mine has come broken. So my highlight pan there is not quite in the pan. You can see there's lots of edges there where it's all powdery. So I received my palette technically broken a little bit. And Look Fantastic does not have the best customer service, unfortunately. I actually learned that the hard way because I reached out to them and I said, my palette that I purchased is not whole. There's some photos here if you want to look, etc. And they initially offered me a 15% refund, which I was like, oh, I think I've been spoiled by these other brands because I've never heard of that before. Usually Sephora and other brands will just sort of replace something, like right away send you something that is fully perfect. But I pushed, I'm like, come on guys, 15%, that's not good. They then said we can do 25% refund and that's it. So that was a little bit disappointing. It does not make me want to shop there on a regular basis because if something were to happen to the makeup that I buy, it doesn't seem like the refund policy or replacement policy is very strong. So it's definitely disappointing. Anyways, it could just be that this was launched and then it wasn't supposed to be launched and they couldn't send me a replacement because it was a mistake. Who knows? But a 25% refund that I had to fight for, I was not super impressed by. Anyway, that's just a side note. This has not launched, like I said, on Natasha Denona's website yet, nor at Sephora, and also she's at Ulta now, so I don't believe it's at Ulta either, but it has the same beautiful, reflective, like metallic packaging like the other palette. The other palette was called the Glam face palette. This is the Glam face palette. It is really beautiful. It still has that same window to kind of block the blush and the highlight in, and then it has, of course, those gorgeous shades. There are 2 shimmers in here, 3 mattes in this one, and in this palette, in the Love Face palette, we actually have 4 mattes and 1 shimmer in this one. I'm really careful how to hold this. I do not want that highlighter to fall in my lap, or even worse, on the carpet. And this one gave me a lot of vibes from her previous palettes. In particular, the Love Mini Love palette, Mini Crush palette, my Dream palette, Circo Loco. There's quite a few that pull from this one. So we're going to talk about it and all of the dupes that I have found. There's quite a few similar shades from my existing collection. I do also believe that this Dream Glow highlight is also the same one from this one, the My Dream Cheek Trio. This is the blush and highlight palette from the My Dream collection that launched last year, and you can see that it's the exact same My Dream highlight on the very end. This is a palette that I had to also get replaced, which is kind of crazy. I bought this palette also and it came crushed. So it was actually the exact same product in here that was crushed compared to the Love Face palette, except I got this from Sephora and they immediately sent me a replacement. So that's kind of the difference there in customer service, which I was kind of expecting. Oh well. Now I am a shimmer fan. It is something that I love personally, so this does lack shimmer to me. So that's kind of the first thing. I really wish there was another shimmer, just like how she structured the Glam face palette. I wish she would have put one more shimmer in there and instead of one of the mattes. So that is just my preference. When it came to swatching them, I felt like they swatched really nicely. They're not the strongest swatches, but they're also not the weakest one that she's ever done. Going from left to right, the first shade is called Esme. It is a creamy matte. We have Juliet, which is also a creamy matte. Aiko, which is a creamy matte. The shade Affinity is a glitter metallic, very, very beautiful. And we also have the shade Giddy at the end, which is a creamy matte. So there's no cream to powder finishes or anything else. It's the creamy matte finish as well as that glitter metallic. Otherwise, that is it for this palette. There is a cream blush in the top left corner, as well as that Dream Glow highlight, which, like I said, I do believe is the same as the trio, if not a very, very close duplicate, because even the swatches you can see here, I believe it's the same thing. And knowing that I ordered this My Cheek trio and it also came broken goes to show that this is a very particular formula that is very prone to breakage. I haven't found any repeat shades in my collection, but I have found lots of duplicates, so we're going to talk about that. But overall, the eye look that I created today was actually very easy to do, but I will say it's something that I can probably mimic in other palettes. So let's talk about that first of all. Going all over the lid, I actually grabbed the first shade, which is Juliet. This is a creamy matte. This applied just like her other mattes. So I do think that this is a consistent formula. I wouldn't say it's deficient in any way. This one does layer beautifully, and it's that really gorgeous pale pink color with quite a bit of that purple element to it. Now next, we're going to go in with the glitter. The glitter, I was wondering if it was going to have fallout, because that was kind of also something that I was like, I don't know, maybe, maybe not. This one didn't. It had very, very little fallout, which I appreciated, but I did use my fingertip, and that is my best tip for you guys. Spray a brush with this one or use a fingertip for that maximum opacity. It is one of those shades that I do believe really benefits from the warmth of your finger pad and really pressing it in to your eye to adhere, as well as have that really gorgeous opacity. So that's really my biggest tip when it comes to this shade. I do find though that it sort of crumbles in pan just a little bit, so it's a little bit of a sloppier shade as well, perhaps because I used my fingertip. But this is one that is gorgeous on. I just think you'll see that there's kind of like bigger flecks in this one. It's still very, very soft, but the glitter is actually larger. And perhaps it is my palette, because when I see the edge of this pan, I also think it might be partially broken or sort of coming off of the sides. So it could just speak to the fact that this is not a perfect palette because of what happened during transit. Looking at the type of shade in the Love Face palette, that is the shimmer, versus the shimmers in the Glam Face palette, I do believe that these shimmers are similar to the Love Face palette shimmer, like just in how it feels, but it does seem to have quite a bit more glitter particles versus these. These are thin and very smooth. The glitter metallic in the Love Face palette seems to have more larger glitter particles. And I don't know, like they don't swatch at all the same, of course. The pink one there is from the Love Face palette. The other two are Glam. So they're not quite the same formula. They have some similar aspects to each other, but I don't believe they're the exact same formulation. The last shade that I used is the Esme shade, which is described as a raspberry pink. It's on the very left of this palette. It also is a matte. This to me is one that I believe also performed pretty well. I used my Sonia G brush with this one, so it's a natural hair. I didn't see any concerns with it. I had to build it up slightly. I do think that it skipped a little bit when I was applying it, but I think it also speaks to just my lids and how they're a little bit hooded there. I wouldn't say it's a defective shade by any means. So I'll continue to test the rest of them, but this is sort of the look I came up with just from the jump. With the eye anyway. I do think you can of course add the purple. You can definitely do other looks. I like her face palettes because they offer what a mini palette would give you, which is 5 shades, plus you get a blush and a highlight, so I like that. However, I'm not super sold on the blush color, so let's talk about that next, because I did apply that to my cheeks. When you initially apply it to the cheek, you can see here that I don't know, I almost looked kind of dead at first. It was quite interesting of a purple on me anyway. I'm not sure if it's just my undertones, but when I kept applying it, I was like, yikes, it doesn't look very flattering. Now, as I'm wearing it, I've also added a touch of the Cheek Trio blush, which is this one, to kind of give it some more rosiness to it. So there's a little bit of that blush over top, but it is still primarily that blush from this palette. I just wanted a little bit more warmth. I felt like it was kind of dead on my cheeks. I'm not sure if it's just me, so let me know your thoughts. I don't know, this was sort of a blush that I wasn't quite getting on board with. It also seemed to lift my foundation just a bit. So I'm going to continue to play with that as well, but I'm sort of undecided on that part. This highlight does apply like the highlight from the Trio palette, and to be honest, I prefer the Trio only because I feel like I like this powder over top the cream. Like I love how this combination works together. I like that this is more of a rosy tone, and then when you have this beautiful like cream glow with the powder on top, it's really, really stunning all together. But I think the powder freestanding, it's just kind of okay to me. It's not my absolute favorite highlight either. So I do think if you want the highlight, this is a much better option because it just combines and coordinates so beautifully in this palette. This one falls short for me when it's just by itself in the Love Face palette. So when it comes to duplicates, you can see here that the Esme shade is very close to one of the pinks in the My Dream palette. This is called Instinct, so those are pretty similar. We also have the shade Juliet, which is that pale pink. It's very similar to Cotton Candy from Circo Loco there. We also have the deep purple in the Love Face palette. It's called Aiko or Aiko. This is very similar to the shade My in the Mini Love palette. So this palette here, you can get a similar look with. So she's done a lot of these types of palettes, right? Like the Mini Love palette is this one, and there's not quite duplicate shades. There's one very close shade, like I said, but otherwise it's similar. Even this Mini Crush palette, if you guys have that, that would be a very similar look. Like she's done these types of palettes with lots of pinks before. So part of me is kind of like, this one is not super special from her. I don't necessarily think it's bad, but it's also one that I'm like, not the most excited about. If you are a Natasha Denona fan and you just want to grab whichever one, I don't think you'll be disappointed by it. If this is kind of your style, I think that's totally fine. But if you own any of these other palettes, like any of the Love palettes or anything, you could get a very, very similar look with just like the eyeshadows. And this blush is just sort of meh, I don't know. Perhaps it will grow on me, but this one is just okay. But given how much of Natasha Denona I've actually tried, there's quite a few palettes that I would recommend over this one. So this to me, I think you can definitely skip. Really hope this review was helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching. And until my next one, take care and stay safe. Bye guys.